Well, my guest tonight is Banking Association of South Africa, MD Cas Coovadia. We're discussing the association's offer to provide advice to cash-strapped state-owned enterprises, following, of course, a meeting that they had with two cabinet ministers. Now, Mr. Coovadia, I just want to finish off a point that we were talking about just before we went to break. Did the ministers give any indication as to whether they are looking at reconfiguring, for lack of a better word, some of the state-owned enterprises so that they can make a bit of money, they can be more efficient, effective, and so on?
I think they certainly indicated that they would be open to ideas on how we see the state enterprises being structured. And I think that already in the past, these ministers have said that they would need to consider possibly taking in equity partners and so on in some of the state-owned enterprises. And so I think that's what I said, that as part of this process, we would certainly, as a financial sector, put on the table what our thinking is around that. We would want to engage, certainly the two boards would want to engage the ministers on that thinking, and not with a view to anything else but actually saying that what are the critical state-owned enterprises, how do they need to run, what are our thoughts on managing the others, and so on. So I think that's a discussion that needs to be had. I think those are hard debates that the country is going to have. These are difficult debates, I know, in our politics, but you know, I think that if there's one thing in my view that the last 10 years have taught us, is that we all need to get out of our little boxes and comfort zones, and we all need to put some of the hard issues on the table, and they are going to have to be trade-offs.
Well, I wanted to do exactly that right now, Cas, and I want to put you on the spot. You and I, for the past 20 years, we've met, I don't know how many times in Parliament. You're trying to drive, obviously, the agenda of like banks and to like how we can improve our banking system and how that is to the benefit of the economy. Now, how many times have you heard members of the executive saying exactly what you've just said? We're open to ideas. We think we'll bring in new people who will make these state-owned enterprises work. But like 20-odd years later, where are we? Not very far from where we were initially.
Fair enough, and that's why the vigilance is absolutely necessary. I think we can, you know, we say very often that the country is at a crossroads. I believe that we're not at the crossroads, we're at a T-junction. Now, we can make one of two choices. The one choice is to say, well, things haven't worked in the past, we've tried, people haven't listened, and not only government hasn't listened, private sector, other parts of civil society, we all have our problems. And we say, well, so there's nothing more to do, and we carry on as we are. The second part is to say, yes, there have been lessons in the past, we've tried, things haven't worked, why haven't people listened to us, can we do things differently? Can we all of us, put national interest topmost of the agenda and leave a country that our children, all of our children, can actually prosper? Now, I think that's the choice we have, and as good South African citizens who always like to make use of good crises, let's make use of this, hopefully one of the last bad crises we would have, and let's put our heads together and make it work. If it doesn't, if people in government don't listen to reason, or people in the private sector and elsewhere don't listen to reason, I can, at some point in time, tell my grandchildren I tried.
Now, well, as much as you may want to be good corporate citizens, and yes, you want to assist, at the end of the day, yours is to look after depositors' money.
Yes.
It is also to look after the interests of your shareholders. Now, realistically, what do you think you'll be able to do?
Look, we'll be able to, if the interaction with the government at the moment is saying that we certainly don't want to help and come to the party in a way that creates bigger problems for us. Bigger problems would be to bring systemic risk into the financial sector or to put depositors' money at risk.
So you've drawn the line.
We've drawn the line, okay? So one, we want a clear indication of what the immediate needs are. Two, we want to then contextualize that in the medium to long-term debates on these issues. Three, government has to consider some sort of underwriting for us coming in here, and so those are the sorts of discussions we need to have. We've, as I said, the entire financial sector is involved. We're putting the best brains in the financial sector together to say, look, in an abnormal situation, we need to think laterally. We need to be creative about how we do this. This is a consequence if we allow these things to go to the wall. So it's got to be in our interest to make this work. But there are caveats. So we are not going to do this willy-nilly. We are not going to bring risk into the system. We are not going to put depositors' funds at risk. And we need to do this in a way that actually ensures that rating agencies, investors, and others look upon this favorably and look upon this with confidence.
Now, excuse me for asking things that probably are obvious to you, but what made this even more difficult and for us to grasp was the fact that Treasury, for instance, wouldn't even release a statement on this meeting, important as they said it was. Now, there were insinuations that there is also talk of perhaps skills. Are you talking about what? Skills and expertise? Are we talking about secondments? Are we talking about, taking some of your people you're taking from the banks or from your association to actually go into government and do stuff there? Is it at that level as well?
Firstly, we're bringing significant skills to bear to just address the issues we're talking about. Secondly, we've been very clear, not just now, but for quite some time, not just as the financial sector, but as business, that where there is an openness on the part of government to utilize private sector skills, we are more than willing to actually look for them and bring them to bear. So one of the things that's already happening is that private sector skills are being utilized on the boards of the state-owned enterprises. I think if government comes to us and says, look, this is the way we're restructuring, this is the management we need, we're looking for these sorts of people, there's a transition period during which we need some expertise, that we're more than willing to consider it. That's not to say that there's excess expertise in the sector also, but we're more than willing to consider it, to try and find people and to assist. And that's why I've always been of the view when I speak to people in government sometimes, then they say, we can't do this because we don't have the capacity. I think that's just, to be quite honest, nonsense, because we don't have to consider what capacity we have in government, we have to consider what capacity do we have in the country and optimize the utilization of the capacity we have. And we have good capacities in the country, and we need to use it.
Well, I'm asking this because if the members of the executive that you met, whose bona fides you are accepting, are saying we are doing things completely differently from the way things have been done before, then there has to be a demonstration of that. And I'm asking that because, remember, it has been done before at local government, where people, yes, engineers, accountants, yes, and such people were seconded. But because of the hostility and, of course, corruption, yes, in that environment, it rejected them.
Yes.
And as a result, the problems worsened.
Yes.
Because for the longest time, people were lulled into believing that something is going to happen, something is going to give. We've brought in people who know what needs to be done.
Yeah. No, and I think that because of the environment at that time, the context in which people were seconded, it didn't work because the rug was pulled from under their feet. I'm quite convinced that in that era, in the last 10 years, there was a resistance on the part of certain sectors of government to good capacity because they did not want things to work properly, because if things work properly, the possibilities of corruption is reduced, okay? I think the new administration, I'm not saying the new administration is perfect, okay? But I think the new administration, and let me speak here personally, these are people I know personally, people I've been involved in the anti-apartheid struggle. I think that these people are serious about making the difference, and I think they will utilize the capacity that we have. I'm convinced of that. And so we need to, as the private sector, stand ready to say that if the call is made, we must put in our best efforts to try and find the people, because I think putting in and seconding in, whether it's seconding or whatever way we structure it, putting in capacity and fixing up what needs to be fixed up is far more effective than putting money into a structure or system that's not working. And so we would be very...
On an unrelated issue, just your comment on the VBS saga?
Well, look, I can't comment on VBS itself because that's subject to curatorship now. I think all I can say is that, again, we've always said that we have a regulator that's proactive, that deals with these issues effectively. I think the Reserve Bank has dealt with the VBS issue effectively. I think it's sad and tragic at what I read that's coming out of the VBS debacle, if you like, because one, it's not good for the banking sector itself. It's a small institution. It has no systemic risk, but it's not good for the reputation of the banking sector. And two, I mean, VBS is a mutual bank that's has primarily black members. And in the context of promoting black enterprise and so on, this is sad. So bottom line is that whether it's VBS or anybody else, when actions like those that are reported, and I can only talk from what I'm reading, we must get to the bottom of this, and people have got to pay and they've got to be accountable.
You don't think it begins to raise doubts about our banking system, which we get told every day ranks among the best in the world?
No, I don't think it does, because again, from what I read, the Reserve Bank tells us that they had warned VBS about the actions a while ago. So it's not as if the Reserve Bank didn't pick it up in their supervisory role, but for whatever reason, those things were exacerbated, and at a point in time, the Reserve Bank said we have to put in a curator. So I think that our regulators do pick things up early. They then warn you about it. They raise it. They depend on the institution to actually remedy it and deal with it. And in this case, the institution didn't, and they acted.
Cas Coovadia, thank you very much for coming through this evening. He is the Managing Director of the Banking Association of South Africa. And that brings us to the end of tonight's edition of As It Happens. My name is Vuyo Mvoko.